All right, so then we've got the dashboard up top. Now, you would think the dashboard would be like a really important place, but it actually has a bunch of stuff that is kind of interesting, like information, and you can dig into it in more detail, but it's not really where you're going to go on a day-to-day basis to do the data input, because you're usually going to go into the bank and the transaction. So you have here, you've got your planner and your home page. You've got your transactions. This will be a key place to go because that's where your bank feeds are. You've got your app transactions, which that's a specialized area if you're dealing with like online stores. And we have a whole nother course or section on that if you want to check that out, because that's a specialized area that you could specialize in. The receipts. So if you're uploading receipts, this was a really like highly marketed thing before. But most of the time these days, we're using electronic transactions. So I don't think this actual receipts app is as, useful as they kind of were hoping it or advertising it's going to be. But you could deal with the receipts here. I think we have another course or section on that as well. Our reconcile. So we have the reconcile information here. We'll talk about bank reconciliations later. Rules, we can set up rules with regards to the bank transactions. We'll talk about how to do that in the bank section, the bank feed section, which is after, let's guess, like maybe the third part of the course. Chart of accounts, this is one way you can get to the chart of accounts, which is the underlying set of accounts. And then we've got reoccurring transactions, which could be saved transactions to make them happen automatically, which we might have another course or section on that specialty area. The sales area, remember, is the customer area or customer center where you have the overview. You've got all the sales forms. That's in essence, if you go into here, all the forms under the customer. And then we've got, what is this doing? Que paso. And then we've got invoices, which are going to be the invoices are the things we have to track because those are the things that might be outstanding that we need to find payments on. Estimates are things are only used if we have estimates, which you might have in like a job cost system, which we might touch on later in our practice problem. We've got the sales orders, and we've got the, which is a type of form within the sales process. We've got the recurring payments, if we're setting those up, and then there's our good old customers, and then the products, these being the things that are going to be populated, inventory and service items on the sales forms, invoices, and sales receipts. The expenses that we touched on is the vendor center. So you have the expenses over here, which basically have all the forms in it, meaning the forms under this section in the vendor center in essence. And then the bills, which is the important form because it increases accounts payable if you're tracking accounts payable. Then your vendors, which you can track who you owe the money to. Contractors is under here if you're dealing with the contractors, meaning when you have payroll, you might have people that you pay as W-2 employees. You might have contractors. Mileage, this is an interesting thing that we have a whole nother course or section on because if you're doing this for taxes in the United States, automobiles become a problem because you might be using a mileage method instead of the actual expense method. And so this might help you to kind of deal with that particular issue. 1099 forms, because we have to process the 1099s. That's tied to the vendors. And that's, again, in the United States, we might have to tell the IRS, basically rat out to the IRS people that we paid money to if the IRS thinks they're small enough under the radar so they don't already have their hooks into them and they're not employees, because if they're employees, the IRS is going to force us to do a lot more than just report the 1099s, actually taking out the withholdings and so on, which we might talk about later. Customers and leads. So this is going to be kind of a specialized area for customers, which we might have another course or section on this. You have your customers here again, and then marketing information. Now into it, now I believe MailChimp is one of the big mail systems that kind of houses the emails for email marketing campaigns. So you might be able to integrate this, helping you with your email marketing campaign with your customers with the help and use and integration of MailChimp, which is interesting. And then we have the reports, which we'll talk about in detail later, which is where we opened our balance sheet, income statement, major financial statement reports. The payroll, which is an add-on feature. You have to turn it on to use it. The time. Now, time tracking, I think we have another course or section on this because you might use the time tracking to help you generate the payroll. That's what most people first think about. But possibly even more important or used more often is time tracking in order to bill clients. If you're in a job cost system like a law firm or a construction company or even a CPA firm, right? You're going to have your staff doing work and you're going to need to track the time. And you can kind of do that pretty neat and in a cool way within QuickBooks, actually allowing the other people to track their time that automatically goes into the QuickBooks system and allows you to then take that information to create bills or invoices from invoicing the client. So I think we have another course or section on that. It's kind of an added tool that might be useful for particular types of businesses. Plan better and budget. Manage all your profit and loss balance sheet budgets in one place. So we'll talk a little bit more about budgeting later. Budgeting is kind of something that you would need to do. You can't just do it without the help of management, because management is the one that's going to basically tell you what changes are going to be made in the future typically. But we can put together a budget and then project what's going to happen in the future. And then QuickBooks is great about running reports, comparing what we budgeted to happen to what actually happened as time passes. Taxes. So we have the payroll up here, which usually deals with the payroll taxes now that we have to deal with in the United States. And the United States, we have a sales tax, which might be a state tax versus the federal tax, which has federal income taxes. And that could be handled using this kind of widget area down here. It's similar to it's a type of usage tax. So if you're in other countries, then it's quite likely that they're taxing maybe not with an income tax, but some type of usage tax. So you'll have a similar scenario to what we'll do here when we do the sales tax if you're in that situation. My accountant. Now notice that you have different users that can access the software, which might be users that are going to do different bookkeeping items within the software, but we can also give the software to our tax professional, which is great because it used to be that I had to give them actual physical reports, balance sheet and income statement to do the taxes for income tax reporting if you're in the United States, such as a Schedule C sole proprietorship. And then I had to give them a backup on the desktop version, and that was cool, but it still was an issue because the backup, I had to get the backup and give them a backup and they needed the software. But now you can add the accountant, which doesn't really account as a user, right? But has the same kind of concept of accessibility to the software. So now the tax preparer can just get whatever they need, and there's less calling and communication. I need this report and that report, more detail on this and that. So that's what's really cool about an online system, is that you can easily give not only reports, but the whole thing to the accountant and say, here it is, get it, do your part on this thing. It also really helps for the separation of duties, saying, hey, look, I'm going to try to automate everything on my side, try to do things with the bank feeds as much as possible, and then allow the accountant department, CPA firm possibly, a lot more ability to do year-end adjustments to put the books correctly on a tax or an accrual basis, right? So, which was a lot more difficult to do if you had to exchange backup files, or if you had to have the accountant actually physically go to your location in order to enter the adjustments, right? That became a problem. Now this is lending and banking. So this is going to be like the PPP loans and stuff. So this is really, they're trying to help you with financing. So this is kind of almost like a sales thing if you want to take out a loan with them and so on. So it's not really part of, in essence, the process normally. This is our commerce, and basically it's saying if you have a Shopify store or some type of online store, in particular eBay, Amazon, or Shopify, you can use this integration. We have a whole nother course or section on that, and that's another specialty area. So if you specialize in that kind of bookkeeping, there's certain things that you want to basically understand for example, how you're going to deal with the inventory. Do you want to deal with the inventory pulling it into the QuickBooks system? Many people say that's possibly not the way to go, but rather integrate it so that you can track the inventory on the other websites possibly, and then pull in the information that is needed for your QuickBooks system, and then make periodic adjustments so that you can possibly and properly record taxes at the end of the year, which does deal with inventory components. In any case, then we have the apps. So notice that QuickBooks is integrating some apps as they merge together. So now they've got this area here with the commerce. If you turn this on, you're kind of integrating to some degree on eBay, Amazon, and Shopify, which are basically now they have formally kind of made the app within QuickBooks in essence, kind of to do that integration. And we saw that with MailChimp, again, you might be able to tie them together because they're related now. But these are going to be third-party apps that you can then search for that might have more integrations that could be useful. You want to be very careful with the types of apps that you're going to be putting into the system and working with, making sure they're quality apps because they are third-party apps, and so they don't feel as secure to me as using one that is owned by the same company or within the company. But there are some good ones, and those apps will usually be specific to a particular type of industry that you're going to be in. So what we want to do as bookkeepers and accountants is be thinking, what kind of industry do I want to specialize in? Oftentimes, that's one way that you can think about it, and then think about what's the best system that I can do better than anyone for that particular type of clientele, possibly, and therefore I have an edge, right, on that particular type of client that other people don't know how to deal with as much, right? And some of those might be dealing with an app. So we'll touch on those concepts. That's a concept I'm going to return to all the time when we're looking at these different navigations of the software in terms of when this is going to be important, what kind of clients will this be important to, what kind of businesses will this be important to, when won't it be important, and when can we automate this system versus not automate it with the help and use of bank feeds. So that's the general outline.